Next man up is the mantra for the Houston Texans defense versus the Green Bay Packers. That and much more on the weekend edition of the Locked On Texans podcast.
Where the dogs at?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the weekend edition of the Locked On Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If this is your first time here, hey, I need you to do 3 things for me.
What are they?
Go over to YouTube, comment, like, and share. And for our everydayers from the Himalayas, hey, high five. High five. John say bring it in. I'm saying high five. Because, hey, without you, it could be no us. On today's show.
And listen, and without y'all, we wouldn't have the army that we need to go up against these Green Bay Packers and Locked On Packers. So, hey, thank y'all. Come on in. We finna rock out, man. We finna do it, Sarge.
On the weekend edition of the Locked On Texans podcast, the official injury report is out. Who's out? There's a meeting in the red zone and potential Super Bowl. Wait a minute, John. On Madden or in real life?
We talking real life. Wow. We are talking real life on today's show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman, on the other side of the screen, holding it down for the Houston Texans community, man. Texans Credential Media member, Brian Big Sarge Bearfield. This is one of those days where, man, hey, listen, the last couple of days have been full of energy, Sarge. The last couple of days has been full of great back and forth between, I think, 2 franchises that are led by 2 great young quarterbacks that have a lot of aspirations to make the big game, a lot of talented players on those rosters. But for the Houston Texans, they will be without Kamari Lassiter, starting cornerback. They will be without starting linebacker Azeez Al-Shire. They will be without starting linebacker Henry To'oTo'o, and we do not have an update on Christian Harris right now. They will be without starting safety Jimmy Ward, and they will be without return man and receiver Robert Woods. That's a lot of being without with some key players, Sarge, going into this game. What are your thoughts?
Next man up. Swarm mentality.
Absolutely.
Iron sharpens iron.
All of those things.
Look, I almost said iron. Iron sharpens iron. Y'all know how we do it down here in Houston. Look, John, no excuses. No excuses. They're not going to stop the game and say we're going to reschedule it until everybody's healthy.
Right.
And they're not going to do that, because if that was going to be the case, they would have done that Thursday night for the New Orleans Saints.
Oh, man.
And all the injuries that they have. So they're not going to reschedule this game. And so if you are on this Houston Texans roster and you are healthy and you can play, you're going to play. This is where training camp comes in. This is, in all honesty, this is where D'Amico and Nick are going to find out who's actually been paying attention, who's actually been putting in the work, who's been watching, who took OTA seriously, who took training camp seriously, who took preseason seriously, who takes practice seriously, who gets into their playbook. This is where it's time to show, hey, coach, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play today. John, they have to, those reserves, they have to step up, because D'Amico is not going to take any excuses. He doesn't want to hear excuses. And he understands that he's going to be without 4 defensive starters on Sunday against a high-powered, high-octane offense being led by a very good quarterback and a very good offensive mind in head coach Matt LaFleur. You know what? None of that means anything to D'Amico. He coaches the Houston Texans, and his whole mindset is, well, Azeez can't go. Neville, it's your turn. Henry can't go. Hey, Jake Hansen, it's your turn.
Yeah, I think it do mean something to D'Amico. I think this is one of those opportunities, And it's not like D'Amico hasn't had those opportunities before to where, hey, listen, I may be handicapped a little bit, but I am a hell of a coach.
Yep.
And I have ways to take away what your best attribute is. And I think that, I mean, again, the handicaps are there. Without 4 defensive starters, I think they are already playing from behind. I mean, let's be real. And of those defensive starters, the one guy has been remotely considered throughout the entire building as the key to this offseason and Azeez Al-Shaair, right? Everybody has called him the unsung hero, the leader of this team, the whole nine on that defensive side. But to your point, D'Amico ain't looking for no excuses, man. He ain't out there trying to, we're without guys. Let somebody ask him about that in the post-press conference to see what he says and what his reaction is. It ain't about that. So I think this is a perfect opportunity for him to.
Well, wait, John, you got to ask him because he has to be able to brag on the fact that he won with those players.
Oh!
I'm just saying.
I think this is going to be one hell of a game. This is our weekend show, so we're a little bit more laid back, but I think this is going to be a great game. I do think we're going to get a shootout, and it's going to come down to, again, what we said earlier in the week. It's going to come down to those small plays that players are going to have to make. But in D'Amico's case, I think this is one of those games where, like the Cleveland Browns game in the playoffs, where not only did the Houston Texans have an offensive explosion, but how many points did they allow against the Cleveland Browns? A couple of weeks before that, how many points did they put up on the Texans? This is going to be one of those games where when your offense isn't producing as a coach, how can you get the best out of your defense? And for D'Amico Ryans, without those players, I am really interested to see if he's going to lean heavily on the next man up for those positions, or will it be a next man up? Will he rotate some of those linebackers in and out? Now, Neville Hewitt, I think, is probably the guy that he trusts the most for the next man up. And so, Jamal Hill, what are some of those young rookie linebackers? What will their role look like? Jake Hansen, who, obviously I think will start for the Houston Texans, ran with the ones Thursday and Friday. What can he do for the Houston Texans? And is he one of those players that will have to step up, but the snap count may not be as high as maybe like a Neville Hewitt? So I'm very, very curious to see how D'Amico Ryans, Matt Burke, the defensive coaching staff, how they will go about trying to disguise and mask different ways that they want to take out that Green Bay Packers offense.
I think one of the biggest coaching and teaching points this week was, especially for those Houston Texans linebackers, was trust your instincts, not your eyes. Trust your instincts, not your eyes, because what the Green Bay Packers like to do, they like to do a lot of motioning. They do a lot of confusion, and you have to be disciplined enough to know that, okay, look, they're doing all this. What are my keys? I know what my keys are. When I say trust your instincts, if you know that your key is watching what the guard is going to do, then just do that. Don't watch who's going in motion. Don't watch everything else that's going on. You know that the key to whatever you're going to do is right here. Because, John, when you have all that motion, I put it like this. When the Houston Texans were getting ready to play the Minnesota Vikings, and defensive coordinator for the Vikings, Brian Flores, does a lot of pre-snap stuff on that defensive side of the ball. He moves them a lot until the ball is almost snapped, and then it stopped. So what the offensive lineman told me, he said, look, they can do all that moving. We have keys, and they're going to stop. And when they stop, they're going to show you exactly what they're going to do. Don't get caught up in all that confusion. Now, it's a lot. And so as I digress, that's exactly what the linebackers and some of those defensive backs that are going to be in the game. Listen, Jalen Petrie is playing that nickel position for the first time this season, the first time in his NFL career.
Please be disciplined.
He has to be disciplined, John.
Has to be. I mean, and listen, one thing I want to point out, because we're talking about guys that got to step up. We're mentioning names like Neville Hewitt and Jake Hansen. Yesterday on Friday's show, we mentioned D'Angelo Ross. Like we're mentioning these names, right? But the fact is, if you've been out there,
Yeah.
hey, you got to play your game, and you have to kind of, you got to raise above that expectation. So I'm going to say this, man. Going into this season, who's the one player we consider would have an all-pro season?
Derek Stingley Jr.
Hey, he can't go to sleep.
Oh, he won't.
This ain't one of them games. And what I've noticed about Derek Stingley Jr., especially dating back to his sophomore year, it's kind of like, and stop me if I'm wrong before we get out, it's kind of like, oh, y'all got me messed up a little bit. And I think last week, Keyshawn Boutte, because I'm following the Patriots, that's all I've been talking about, that touchdown. So I think this is one of those games where he's going to suit up and shut up and do his thing.
John.
And he has to.
John, the week prior against the Buffalo Bills, he was targeted 4 times. Didn't give up a single catch.
Did not.
Against the Patriots, he was targeted 5 times, 4 receptions for 56 yards. Now,
and
you just said, and a touchdown. And you just said 40 of those yards came on one play.
Mm-hmm.
So the other 3 catches equated to 16 yards. After the half, go in and watch how he locked in. He doesn't.
You see, that's what he
doesn't like to be embarrassed. And not only that, he's going up against a quarterback who he feels like is going to challenge him in Jordan Love.
Yeah,
it feels like Jordan
Love will make some challenging throws.
He didn't think Drake May was going to challenge him like that. He didn't think Drake May was crazy enough to challenge him like that. That's why when he locked in, he said, all right, we finna shut all this down. He knows that Jordan Love is going to come at him. He knows that Christian Watson wants to embarrass him. He knows that Romeo Doubs wants to embarrass him. The problem is he wants to show them you're going up against a shutdown corner.
Yeah.
And so if he can shut down one side of the field, and on that opposite side, you still have, I don't know, D'Angelo Ross and Troy Pride may get a chance to be elevated to the active roster. Like, he knows that they're going to need some help on that other side, but he going to tell them you ain't got to worry about this one.
Derek Stingley, Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, Jalen Petrie, Foley Fatukasi, all of those guys have been starters for the Houston Texans all year, and they have played well in matchups all year. But this is the game where I really don't want to talk about the guys that got to step up. We really got to talk about the guys that's been here. Y'all are going to have to really be who the defense leans on and make plays. Kalen Bullock, you've been a starter for a majority of the year. You've got a lot of starter snaps. You got to lock in. This is one of those games where the starters are really going to have to carry the other players, and I can't wait to see how they perform defensively.
And they're taking it personal too, John.
And they are taking it personal. When we come back, the offense got to take it personal because I got a nice stat for y'all, but there's a reason why the Texans ain't been in the end zone as much. So we'll talk about that and more on the other side of the break of the Locked On Texans podcast. However, for our small business owners, whenever you're hiring for your small business, I know you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, right? You don't want to hire any just Joe Schmo off the street. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has all of the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They help you find and hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who are not actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedon. That's linkedin.com/lockedon to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And also, guys, this is a big game for the Houston Texans on Sunday. And on Prize Picks right now, you can more than or less than on CJ Stroud, 258 passing yards. What you think, Sarge? More than or less than?
Oh, more than.
More than? Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, let's take another look at Dalton Schultz. Fantasy, 8.5 points on fantasy score. More than or less than on that?
Less than.
Less than on that. See, if you called it right, 2 picks is all you need to win more than up to 100 times your cash on Prize Picks right now. And if you if you're unsure about what you want to bet or how you want to play it, just go ahead and check out the community plays on Prize Picks, the promo tab, alongside Drewski, Joe Budden, and more stars in the community for the Prize Picks community. You can go and check out what they're betting on and how they have everything laid out for them each week, and you can hop in on some of that action. Also, Prize Picks is making it safe, fast, and secure to get all of your withdrawals. Whenever my picks hit, I get my money as quick as 15 minutes. You're not losing on Prize Picks. It's a lot of dubs getting handed out for you guys. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. So if you haven't checked out Prize Picks before, this is your time. This is the message. This is the case that I'm telling you. I'm making the case for you. Go ahead and check out Prize Picks right now. Download the app. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners. Let me put my hoodie back on, man. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, to this weekend edition. So, there's a meeting in the red zone.
Yeah.
And don't you be late. But for the Houston Texans, Sarge, found some very interesting numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And Friday's show, I mentioned how many dead plays there have been for the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
They currently rank second in the NFL in plays per game, with just a little bit over 66 plays per game. Yet they are currently ranked 14th in the league in points per game, sitting right under 24 points per game. Now, let's compare that to teams like Tampa. They're 19th in plays per game, second in scoring. Washington, 16th in plays per game, third in scoring. Minnesota, 25th in plays per game. They are sixth in scoring. Green Bay, 10th in plays per game, 8th in scoring. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Houston Texans are having a ton of plays that aren't getting to the red zone area. And that issue, they are bottom of the league right now, currently ranked 23rd in 2.3 attempts per game in the red zone. That issue, I think, has really put a cap on why we have had these conversations surrounding Bobby Slug. What's wrong with the offense? How can they score more points? Well, they have a lot of plays, but they're not just getting into enemy territory. They're not getting into the red zone, and that has limited the opportunity for them to score plays. The majority of those lack of opportunities are coming when? The second half. So for Houston, we're mentioning all of the big names that got to perform on defense, but I think that they got to make sure that they are not, again, having as many dead plays as they've had this year. And when they are in that enemy territory, when they're behind enemy lines and it's time for them to go score, they got to put up or shut up. This is one of those games where those excuses, like you mentioned, it ain't going to fly. You put up or shut up. I guess my question for you is, once they are in the red zone, what are you seeing that they can exploit offensively to make sure that they end up in the end zone?
Well, I'm glad you said that, John, because with those stats that you just gave, and I think that a lot of that ranking came from, especially when they couldn't do anything against the Minnesota Vikings in week 3, when they didn't score until the second half and they only scored 7 points. And so a lot of that may have come in that game. They just looked horrible. They looked terrible. And then we seen the offensive lows that they've had in the second half, of course, until the New England Patriots game. And we said before, in week 1 against the Indianapolis Colts, they scored 17 points in the second half, and then they didn't score in double digits until week 6 against the New England Patriots, where they had 27 points in the second half. And a lot of that was due to the fact that they also, the defense had 4 takeaways, and it was a short field for a lot of that offense.
I also want to add to that point, weeks prior to the New England game this past Sunday, penalties really hurt this team, man.
Yeah.
I mean, they were, number 2 or number 3 in penalties per game. I think they were number 2 or 3, if not number 1 in penalty yards per game. So you look at the fact that when they were trying to establish those drives, now you're looking at, again, 1st and 20, 1st and 15, 2nd and 18, things of that nature. And they've cleaned that up the last 2 games, going from nearly 72 penalty yards per game to the last 2 games, 65 penalty yards, and then 38 penalty yards against the Pats. this is one of those games where I'm sure one of the messages throughout the week has been we got to play clean football.
Yep, John, I'm glad you brought that up because, like you said, in the week prior against Buffalo, they had 7 penalties for 65 yards, 4 penalties for 38 yards against the Patriots. That's 11 penalties for 103 yards. That's coming off the fact that they were averaging 11.66 in the weeks prior. And so what they've done is they've really, really been able to bring they've really been able to bring down those penalty numbers. But John, the one thing that I like, and the one thing that I like about the Houston Texans offense, and the one thing that I think that they can exploit on Sunday against the Green Bay Packers, John, all those stats that you just read off, they're number 1 in the NFL in red zone touchdowns.
Yeah.
12 of 16 for 75%.
So the issue is they just got to get there.
Exactly. CJ has 8 touchdowns inside the 10-yard line. So they just got to get to the red zone. And once they get to the red zone, and now remember, John, they even when they got it to the red zone in the second half of the Chicago Bears, when they got near the red zone, the second half of the Chicago Bears, then with Jacksonville, and then with Jacksonville, and then with Buffalo. Those 3 games, John, they were Joe Mixon went out. Joe Mixon was out.
You said that.
Last week against the New England Patriots, he had a 20-yard touchdown run and 10-yard touchdown pass. And I asked him on Friday, John, I said, how much pride do you take in being a two-way back? He says, I'm on the team to do whatever I can to help the team. He said, all I need to do is get the ball in my hands, and I'm going to make something happen. Whether that's by being handed to me or being thrown to me, I'm going to make something happen. And so the lack of red zone opportunities, a lot of that came when Joe Mixon wasn't in the game. And a lot of people will say, well, Sarge, they still had other weapons and other threats. Yeah, but Dare Ogunbowale and Cam Akers, who was there at the time, who is now with the Minnesota Vikings, they weren't going to get it done, and they weren't scaring opposing defenses.
Right.
There's something to say about a running back like Joe Mixon, who jumped on the radar in week 1 when he had 159 rushing yards against the Indianapolis Colts. There's something to say about that. And then you watch him come back after after being out injured with an ankle injury, and he rushes for 102 yards, scores a touchdown, and he has a receiving touchdown. If I'm not mistaken, what he have 132 total scrimmage yards on this past Sunday and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And so, yes, once you get into the red zone, also, John, we remember when he was with the Cincinnati Bengals, he was by far one of the most productive red zone running backs in the league. And so the problem is they haven't been able to get to the red zone. But I think all that's going to change on Sunday.
And I think for the Houston Texans offense and with and without Nico, which I think this is a testament to the weapons that they have, they are able to really hurt teams underneath. And I think if there's any chance for this to be the shootout that I think it will be in one of those explosive offensive performances, they are going to have to win underneath and get a lot of yak yards. And I think that's where we look at Joe Mixon, who, down in the red zone, and the ball didn't go as well against the Patriots, but there was a play where you see him come out of the backfield and run a choice route.
Yeah.
So, things like that with Joe Mixon, that's an added element. Savvy vet is one in the league in many different ways, especially on the ground, but also through the air, right? Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz has to come to play. But, they have guys that I really believe can utilize their strengths against the second level of that Green Bay Packers defense to just win underneath, and they got to get some of those yak yards. And I think that, to your point, Joe Mixon will be, I think, a major part to this offense in order for them to score points once they get down to the red zone. And he just does it all for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to add, John, is now having him back and with this offense building some continuity, the way that they looked last week against the Patriots. John, you have C.J. Stroud has thrown only 9 interceptions in 700 career attempts. And so you don't kill yourself with penalties. CJ can protect the ball and sustain the drive and get you into the red zone.
All right. Keys to success. That's the formula for winning this game.
Yeah.
Is this a potential Super Bowl matchup in the future, Sarge?
Ooh, that is a very good question, John. I don't. No.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it when we come back. FanDuel is also hooking up our listeners, whether you are in across the country, across the nation, wherever you are, man. Listen, FanDuel is hooking y'all up. They've been hooking y'all up all season, and now they're still hooking you up. Whenever you place your first $5 bet, they're giving you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. You don't got to win.
Yeah.
You ain't got to go out there, Sarge, and place a 4-5 leg parlay.
Yeah.
All you got to do is place $5. And FanDuel is looking back at you and saying, listen here, son.
I got $5.
You got 5 on it. I know you got $5 sitting at home somewhere in your bank account. Go ahead and check out FanDuel, especially if you are across the nation. FanDuel is hooking y'all up again. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet on FanDuel.
You're a disruptive force. You play very violently when you're on the field. How is it when you go up against a running back like Josh Jacobs who has that same mindset?
You got to tackle him about it. I don't got no problem getting my hands dirty. Yeah, I got no problem. I'm going to try to knock his helmet off. Yeah. That's just on me. I don't care about nothing there. I don't care about where he went. I don't care about what he did. I don't care. I don't.
Woo!
It's a lot of smoke.
Woo! Welcome back.
A lot of smoke.
Welcome back to the weekend edition of the Locked On Texans podcast. Hey, look.
Who won't smoke with me?
Hey. Let me tell you something. A
lot of smoke.
Let me tell you something. Those words you just heard from Tim Settle Jr., he wasn't coerced to say those. Nobody said, hey, we about to cut the camera on. When we do, we need you to say exactly this.
That's a D lineman. Ain't no D lineman living like that too, though.
And that's Tim Settle Jr. Listen, let me tell you something. Tim Settle Jr. is nothing but a louder Malik Collins. Malik Collins had that same attitude. Malik Collins would say those same words. Now, he wouldn't say it on video. You're not finna record it. But if he's having a conversation with you, he's going to tell you, I don't care who is across from me. I don't care who's in the backfield. John, when you're down so many starters on the defensive side of the ball, when you know that you have to step it up because you don't have some of your teammates that are going to be there, you ain't got some of your battle buddies that's going to be on the field with you, you got to do what you need to do. Tim Settle, that's how he thinks all the time. Every time. He studies tape. He watches who his opponent is. He knows all that. But his whole mindset is, when I step onto that field, I don't care who's in front of me. I'm trying to do my job and do it violently. Go back and watch him. He's violent. He's aggressive. And I don't mean that like literally. I'm talking about figuratively. But he's so violent and so aggressive with his hands. And he's just a constant menace for who's ever in front of him, because he has a goal. He has an objective. Stop the running back, put pressure on the quarterback, sack the quarterback. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, he's trying to win a game, but he's trying to get paid too. But
yeah,
John,
family to feed.
Right, John, that attitude and those words that he said, that's what the Houston Texans need going into Lambeau Field against the Green Bay Packers.
All 4 quarters.
Yes.
All 4 quarters, all gas, no breaks. Josh Jacobs responded and said, I don't know who that person was. I don't know his name. In mentioning in response to Tim Settle, You're going to find out Sunday.
For sure.
He's going to find out Sunday. But what I find so intriguing about this matchup, Sarge, before we close out, is this could potentially be at some point with these 2 great young quarterbacks and how the Green Bay Packers have always kind of put together a very good roster. The Houston Texans under Nick Caserio, they put together some good rosters the last 2 seasons, and they've drafted some gems for this roster. So it's well put together. This could potentially be at some point a Super Bowl matchup, right?
Well, wait, hold on. When you say because potential is a word that has a wide range. It's a wide range word. So, is there? Are you putting a time construct on this? Is there a time frame on this? Is there a window?
It's one of those. Man, it's one of those. Maybe within 3 years. So now the Packers are in a tough division right now. Detroit, who is a Super Bowl favorite. Minnesota's playing some damn good football, and they have a future head coach in Brian Flores calling their defense. The Packers are a very good team. Chicago's putting it together. I think Houston right now is benefiting from a lack of competition in that division. But in the AFC, they are one of, if not the second best team in the AFC right now. It's Kansas City, it's Baltimore, it's Houston. You pick your poison on how you want to rank them.
John,
they could meet at the top.
John, I get it. Don't get me wrong, I get it. It's a weekend edition of the Locked On Texans podcast. You've been around your baby. You miss the softy when you're around your daughter.
And if it wasn't fit.
You get so just emotionally attached to just being, soft. So John, guess what? As an empty nester, as someone who's traveling to Green Bay, don't worry about it, John. I got it. I'm gonna take on the smoke.
You got it.
There's no possible way, John, that in 3 years the Green Bay Packers will be competing for a Super Bowl.
Oh, wow.
They will still be the fourth best team in their division. The Vikings are going to get better. The Lions are going to get better. They're good. And Caleb Williams, he has all of the weapons on the offensive side of the ball. They're just waiting on him now. Now they're waiting on him. They could add another lineman. So they're going to be competing in their own division to try to make it to the playoffs. Then you look at some of the teams around the rest of the NFC. Hey, John, the Washington Commanders ain't going nowhere.
Okay.
They're not going anywhere. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're going to get better. Kirk Cousins, I got that swag. Atlanta has how many weapons? And you just need Kirk Cousins to get it together. And in any event that he doesn't, you have Michael Penix Jr. You see all those teams I named before the Green Bay Packers? Now let's look in the AFC. Well, you got the Chiefs. And then you got the Ravens. And then who you got, John?
The Houston Texans.
Exactly. So, no, this isn't a potential Super Bowl matchup because the Green Bay Packers won't be there.
Oh, take that, Packers fans.
I said it.
We've been on y'all neck. Oh, man, listen. Last 48 hours, we've been on y'all neck. And I'll tell you this right now. I hope the Texans win this game because I know both of our mentions will get flooded. But I'm saying this right now.
Twitter. I'm muting
right now. Texans win this game. Texans fans, I don't care if you don't got a Twitter account, create one. Because I need all of y'all to flow on over to my man Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers Mentions and just flood them with Texans talk. Thank y'all for watching and listening to today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Subscribe, like, and comment to the podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Big Sarge. Man, I'm glad you're my co-host, brother.
Hey, look, I'm almost afraid to give out my handle because they're going to flood my timeline. But, hey, look, we from Texas. We don't avoid no smoke. Look, you can call me Tim Settle Jr. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter and Big Star Sports with a Z at the end.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we'll holler at y'all Monday. Have a great weekend. Listen here. Be safe. Peace.